Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever and wherever you are watching or listening. This is the Holistic Monitor, and I'm your host, Nick Sconia. The Holistic Monitor is a wellness podcast featuring life energy research, health and wellness transformation, self-improvement and empowerment, philosophy, spirituality, and guest interviews as well. We are an extension of the Institute for Modern Holistic Alchemy, and many subjects we cover involve training courses that are available at modernholisticalchemy.com. We look forward to your comments on our YouTube channel at SAF Training or SAF Learning Labs. And you can also listen on the go with us at Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and more. And with that, let's get today's show started. Hey, this is Nick Sconia, and thanks for joining us today on the podcast. Now, we didn't do an introduction on the last show. It came out as more on the lecture format, so I wanted to address that we will be splitting lectures without an intro will be on the at SAF Training YouTube channel, and with the podcast will be here at Holistic Monitor. So you'll get two different locations for a very similar show. If you want the straight information, you'll go to at SAF Training. And if you want the show, stay right here at Holistic Monitor. Now, on our last lecture and show, we went over the 4 methods of healing. Today, we're going to be covering the healing wave and the control of life energy. And that will involve the symptoms control clock and also the electromagnetic spectrum. These 2 episodes are basically lectures involving Homeopathy Revisited, which is a work published by Joseph R. Sconia Jr., originally Homeopathy 1980. And it's in publication now. And in this course, we're going over some of the bread and butter philosophy of SAF and life energy research. The control method of healing is the method that's used nearly exclusively with SAF, the SAF method. Though, if you're using SAF, there are interpretations that incorporate various different quote-unquote attack methods of healing. Modalities like herbs and vitamins, minerals, more strong force, compact, pressurized substances. Homeopathy is the opposite of that. It is the depressurized, the space method. And in that, if you have a pressurized system or a pressurized condition, injury, trauma, etc., then homeopathy will be adding space to that pressure, therefore alleviating or balancing, equalizing the trauma, the injury, the pressurization. Well, that's the nuts and bolts of the system anyway. It's basically a system to allow you to take control of your personal health, which is always encouraged. And of course, as always, very important if you have anything serious going on or any issue at all, always talk to your doctor. It's very important. This is the real world that we're dealing with, and if you have an issue, you definitely want to seek the advice of trained professionals. And when you're sick, you don't want to just willy-nilly approach it. You want to throw the whole cabinet at it. You want to just take care of it, unload it, and get rid of the pain, get rid of the problem. So I would say, always consult the professionals and, take your health into your own hands. This is your responsibility. Nobody else is going to do it for you. If you've got an issue, seek help. So this show should be pretty good. It's going to go over quite a bit of material. The symptoms control clock is a method of charting the pressure and the space within the system and how you're trying to move the dials of the clock towards total balance. Then also the healing wave goes into a lot of the electromagnetic frequencies and work, and gives you some background. It's just, it's good to have like a philosophy and some kind of sense of theory that you're working around or with while you're doing this. And this is the beginning steps of that. Very intro oriented, but it's definitely very good stuff to digest. And we will be digging into this quite a bit more when we get into the Project ISIS work of the human electricity, the Prometheon, and with the principles of life energy, and of course the origins of genetic behavior, which is the now it's the junk DNA book, which involves a lot of the senses or our methods of sensing the environment around us. All that being said, looking forward to this show. We're at the close of the year. I'm going to be looking to do another podcast before the end of the year, so at some point in time between Christmas and New Year's. So I will wish you a happy holidays now, and again, hopefully, in the next show. The next year is looking to be really, really good. There may be a little bit of spacing, but I'm hopeful to get some interviews with practitioners and thought leaders and people that are in the know in regards to life energy and energetic medicine, energetic healing. So I'm looking to have a few guests, hopefully January, February, that will start manifesting, so that you'll get some of these lessons, plus you'll also get guest interviews and explorations into the world of other people's systems and world and their worldview, which I always love. All right, and so we'll just begin this lecture here on the healing wave and the control of life energy, and I will be chatting with you on the other side after this is through. So, all right, here it comes. Enjoy. Feel free to comment. Make sure you subscribe so you can, find all of our information and keep up to date with us. And enjoy. In this next section, we'll be going over the healing wave, wavelengths of light, electromagnetic spectrum, and light wave phenomenon. Using a prism in 1702, Sir Isaac Newton separated sunlight into a rainbow of colors. It wasn't understood then, but we understand now that sunlight is a mix of all colors. Each color has a different wavelength, even as it travels from the sun at the same speed. The waves of light are shorter for violet and blue and longer for red and orange. The prism refracts light because of the difference in the size of the wavelengths of the light, the color. In 1802, Thomas Young defined the parameters of the visible light spectrum, which was found nestled between the invisible infrared band, this was discovered by Herschel in 1800, and the invisible ultraviolet band, discovered by Ritter in 1801. The light wave phenomena. Later in the 1800s, the discovery of light wave phenomena by James Clerk Maxwell and Heinrich Hertz was significant in that it lent scientific validity to the work of Dr. Samuel Hahnemann. Although he couldn't see these waves, Hahnemann believed that the invisible forces around all organisms and materials in the universe were the guiding energies that were the cause of all motivated life. It is a fact that everything emanating in the visible light spectrum is essentially inactive and dead, a product of carbon crystallization. The works of Hahnemann embodied the chief realization that there is more invisible active energy around living organisms than there is visible energy. We can see readily by studying the electromagnetic spectrum that Hahnemann was correct. There are many more wavelengths of energy found in the invisible light spectrum than the visible light spectrum. Color, the visible light, which is all that can be perceived by the naked eye, is a very narrow band. The electromagnetic spectrum depicts the hierarchy and the breakdown of radiation that exists as visible light radiation, color, and invisible light radiation. These electromagnetic waves are electric and magnetic, which vibrate and oscillate together through space at 186,000 miles per second. The electric waves emanate in long, broad patterns with pulsations that are extremely slow. In the band of the radio waves, the pulsations begin to speed up and the wavelengths shorten. The next band, the microwave band, produces an even shorter wavelength and a more rapid pulsation. In the band that represents the visible light spectrum and color, the pulsations are vibrating billions of times per second, and the wavelengths are shorter than 100,000th of a meter. With the ultraviolet band, X-ray band, gamma ray band, and finally cosmic ray band, there is a greater decrease in the length of the waves and a tremendous increase in the rapidity of pulsation. In essence, what occurs in the sequence mentioned is a tightening effect of waves. While the electric waves stretch to beyond 3,000 miles, at the opposite end of the spectrum, the waves become shorter than 100 trillionth of an inch. With such fantastic deviations, we can readily imagine the infinite amount of variations of wavelengths and vibrations in this sector of our universe. Although oscillating at varying heights of waves, the speed of transmission remains the same. Hahnemann, even without the aid of the sophisticated instruments that we have today, prophesied the existence of such phenomena. However, through more direct scientific means, Hahnemann led medical researchers to the discoveries that were to parallel and even precede the findings made by modern electronic research. Hahnemann wrote that the invisible energy around all living things was the dynamic force that directed the activities of all life energy. He believed it was the actions taken by the control center of the human, animal, and plant organisms, and the resultant energy, the electromagnetic waves, surrounding all physical matter that caused life energy. When the control center and the electromagnetic waves malfunctioned and failed to produce life energy, he defined this as illness. The existence of energy, which causes the expression of life, can be studied through light wave phenomena. Each and every cell of every organism, animal, vegetable, mineral, and man, is known to express a complete spectrum of measurable life energy. The spectrum of energy ranges from the most broad wave patterns, which are the electric waves, to narrower and narrower bands. The waves become shorter from the radio waves to the microwaves, through the infrared band, through the visible color spectrum, to ultraviolet rays, X-rays, gamma rays, and finally to cosmic rays. This means that every constituent part of every living organism, down to every atom, emits a total spectrum of light. We humans and all life energy forms are filled with this light and energy. From the smallest of molecules to the complex holistic unit to the greater cosmos, micro to macro. If you could imagine it like an upside-down tornado, to represent the wave forces that are emitted by every living unit of energy, with cosmic rays at the smallest portion at the top and electric waves at the widest portion of the bottom of the upside-down tornado. This includes the cells of a plant, the cells of an animal, and the cells of human beings. It includes all matter. As I had previously said, what is visible to the naked eye is a very small band of electromagnetic waves. However, it is only on the visible spectrum that many of the gross distortions of wave patterns present themselves for easy scrutiny. This is to say that any upset of the invisible waves that surround the organism will show up as a mirror image in the visible light spectrum. If we could pull the waves apart from one another, we could create a distortion. This distortion would be immediately reflected in the cells of the organism. If we could squash all the waves together, again, the exact reflection of this phenomenon would show up as a physical manifestation. It is no coincidence that a person may express the feeling of being pulled apart like a rubber band. It is no coincidence that a person may experience the feeling of having a squashed chest. It is no coincidence that a person can experience almost any type of pain or sensation, depending upon the disjointed condition of those specific waves around the body. And so it is in the environment in this planetary system. The vital forces around any organism can be influenced by the vital forces of any other organism. The wave patterns and frequencies that revolve around human beings, animals, vegetables, and even the minerals can influence other humans, animals, vegetables, and other minerals. This means that the collision or impact, the pressure, as well as the loss or separation from certain objects, the space, will cause distortions in the waves surrounding the organism. It will cause upsets in the most basic life energy units of the human being. All entities that are alive and vibrant can influence another body. It is when the substance has ceased vibrating and turned inert that it has very little effect on the vital forces of the body. To note, chemically and electrically inert materials that possess mass can and will snarl up the basic material processes of the body. These inert substances are crystalline deposits in the tissues and cells of organisms that cannot be ionized or activated or used again. The doctrine of individuality. All materials possess a unique identity unto themselves. This means that the molecules of a lampshade, the molecules of a rose, or the molecules of a human being will be different from any other lampshade, rose, or human being. This is the true doctrine of individuality. No two lampshades, no two roses, and no two human beings are ever exactly the same. Exact sameness is an impossibility. For if they were exactly the same, they would violate the most basic law of the physical universe, which is, two objects cannot occupy exactly the same space at the same time. No two objects can be exactly the same. However dissimilar and individualized each object is in the physical universe, there are objects that are similar. There are objects and materials that are alike. This means that a lampshade can have a look very similar to another lampshade. A rose can be very similar to another rose. And a human being can also appear very similar to another human being. It is the similar that can bring about the proper changes needed for healing. It is the similar that can recycle the energetic waves and frequencies of the organism and reset them into proper balance. It is the similar that can discharge improper energies in the organism and rectify upsets, injuries, and illness. So, as a recap to the healing wave portion of our lecture, the light wave phenomena. Conventional medicine must wait until the disease can be seen in the visible light spectrum, a very, very narrow band. It then uses products to act against the diseased tissue, to inhibit, mask, or block the body's natural reactions. These products also shut off the person's ability to be cognizant of symptoms and their importance. Homeopathy accepts the unseen, invisible symptoms felt by the person to determine the remedy to use. The similar, diluted products stimulate a natural reaction on an electrical, energetic level, urging the body's vital energies, the spirit, into action. Homeopathy works with the defenses of the body, and homeopathy works with the intent of the vital force, the spirit. In our next section on the lecture, we'll be going over the control of life energy, the symptoms control clock. When the knowledge of the healing similar is understood, the control needed to eliminate pain and unwanted sensation from the human organism can be attained from materials that cause similar pains and unwanted sensations in the healthy human body. For instance, it is an accepted fact that the sting of a bee instigates certain symptoms. The eyes water, the throat gets puffy, and there may be swelling with allergic reaction on the skin where the bee attacked the body. It was also found in homeopathic drug experimentation with healthy people that the administration of the diluted parts of honeybee, Apis mellifica, will also cause these same symptoms. However, when the homeopathic material Apis mellifica is administered to a person who has similar symptoms of being stung by a bee, watery eyes, puffy throat, swelling on the skin, the condition is abated. This occurs because the electrical energy of the Apis mellifica has been received and understood by the body. Because of the similar and very common symptoms, Apis mel was one of the first and most often used of remedies. Now, our symptoms control clock depicts the principles of the symptoms within the total balance and out of balance body. It is considered that at 12 o'clock, all wavelengths and frequencies of an organism are stable and in total balance, and at 6 o'clock, the similar waves are out of balance. As we administer a homeopathic product to a healthy person, the effects begin to take shape. The symptoms increase as the intensity of the reaction moves clockwise around the symptoms control clock, arbitrarily from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock. With continuing administration and further note of symptomatology, the person's condition becomes more intense and figuratively moves from 1 o'clock toward the most severe condition, which would be at 6 o'clock. When the 6 o'clock position is reached, a person manifests visible symptoms. At this point, all invisible symptoms which express themselves as pains become solid. The pain of rheumatism becomes a visible calcium deposit. The pain of the bite of an insect becomes a red patch. The discomfort of cracking knee joints leads to melancholy. However, it is with very similar homeopathic drug substances that a person can be made to traverse the symptoms control clock and regain balance. In our symptoms control clock, the right side of the clock from 12 to 6 o'clock is considered positive or increasing in pressure. It is on this side that drug inducement, accidents, or illnesses can cause specific invisible pain. To balance this condition, a negative dose must be applied to the organism. This means that a highly diluted homeopathic preparation of a drug which produces a similar condition, or the very same morbid matter, tuberculosis, rabies, or polio, must be administered to regain balance. This phenomena is directly related to the fact that positive waves of very high pressure exist on a much narrower band, as depicted on the symptoms control clock. Cosmic gamma rays and X-rays exist to the extreme positive, 12 to 4 o'clock. When we highly dilute morbid matter or medicinal-like substances, the condition that more closely approaches electric wave phenomena at 11 o'clock is attained. Highly attenuated doses of any material will equalize and balance any situation. If this theory is true, the application of a highly attenuated dose to a healthy individual would produce nearly the same symptoms, except on the negative bands, the left side from 7 to 12 o'clock. This is what researchers and homeopathy practitioners have found. A healthy person given an extremely diluted dose of a honeybee, Apis mel, will have the exact same reactions as the positive side of the clock, but in this case, it is on the negative side of the clock. Manifested symptoms drive the person towards 6 o'clock in a counterclockwise direction on the left-hand side of the clock. The alleviation of this condition would be either the antidote of the substance or the application of a more positive, proved substance. For a person who has been dosed with a highly diluted homeopathic substance, a successful action would be to give him or her a more positive and non-diluted dose of the same substance. Pan-homeopathy. The symptoms control clock explains the ideas and principles of homeopathy in a visible format. This is the philosophy of healing by like or similar substances that Hahnemann, his predecessors, and later followers taught and espoused. But the symptoms control clock is the most advanced form of pan-homeopathy that modern man can envision. We can see what is happening, or should happen, with the positive and negative aspects of all remedies. It is easy to understand how this fits within our science of energy and the electromagnetic spectrum. Pan-homeopathy, pan, which means all, signifies that preparations can be made from any and all substances, of any time, or of any location. Within the field of pan-homeopathy, not only can herbs and other living things be diluted, but also dates, places, events, all frequencies, all wavelengths, all crystals, all people, thoughts, intentions, ideas, and other heretofore never regarded or imagined substances. The symptoms control clock is the mechanism that can be employed by all who seek to rectify the balance of the human organism through the preparation of similar substances. Symptomatology. The study of symptoms has a very long history and has been used effectively since the beginning of time. A symptom is defined as a change of characteristic in the body, mind, or spirit. It can be a pain or a sensation. It can be an idea or an emotion. It may be subjective, known and felt only to the person experiencing it, or it can be an objective symptom, in that we can see the manifestation. Symptoms cover the gamut of interferences that in some way disrupt the holistic human organism. Any manifestation that creates distortion in well-being is a symptom, such as drug or herbal reactions, impacts with the environment, emotional traumas, accidents, shocks, injuries, and on and on. The subject of symptomatology is the observance of what unhealthy agents in the environment can cause on or to a human being. Life is a constant struggle for survival from the first moments of conception. It is our sensing qualities that peruse the environment to track and be aware of those substances that may do us harm. It is a matter of experience that we note the different manifestations or interferences that we may run into during a given day. When a snake bites, or a spider stings, when a car hits a person, or when there is any type of impact in the environment, the results, the symptoms, are recorded in our memory banks with all 128 sensory channels. In another lecture, we'll be getting into the origins of genetic behavior, from junk DNA, unlocking the hidden secrets of your DNA. Hahnemann has been duly credited by Herbert Roberts, MD, in 1937 as the first to evaluate and codify subjective symptoms, including the emotional ones, which relies on the ability of individuals to know and be able to express their symptoms. In the early days of homeopathy, the researcher made note of the conditions that were brought about by the administration of certain homeopathic drug substances, as these affected the human body. When considering pan-homeopathy, what is recorded is the individual reaction to every substance on the face of the earth. This means that substances that produce symptoms on or in the body are looked upon in a positive sense as the remedies for those reactions. This enters into the realm of allergic responses and any other type of response that renders the human being less productive or less aware. Homeopathic remedies include many herbs, living substances, creatures, insects, and elements. These materials are employed because the reason and origin of the individual symptoms are unknown. In these cases, homeopathy is a necessity. In situations where the origin of the upset is known, pan-homeopathy is the subject that is employed. In this case, the person stung by the bee endeavors to locate the actual bee that did the stinging, perhaps by swatting at it and killing the insect. The dilution and application of this particular bee is one that can totally ameliorate the condition. This would mean that if a young child were struck by a car, and it is known exactly which car it was, then a highly attenuated dose of the bumper of the car would be administered to the child. When a rabid dog bites a man, the material of that dog is used as an antidote. If a person were to fall and strike his or her head against the bedpost on his way to the floor, a highly attenuated and diluted dose of the bedpost would be administered. The reason for this is explainable. When objects in the environment, which have a specific wavelength, crash into the physical organism, the human being, there is an energy exchange. This energy exchange causes an overload of that particular wavelength in the body. We generally move through an environment that is comfortably spaced apart from our body. When any of the objects within the environment become too close for comfort or are crushed into the surface of the body, it results in an overload of that particular object, that frequency. This overload is seen on the symptoms control clock as a positive symptom, pressure. As I explained earlier, the remedy for that symptom is the application of a highly diluted dose of the same. This is also true of conditions caused by too little of the human being, animal, plant, or mineral. When a person has not seen or heard from a loved one for way too long, symptoms appear. Loneliness, emptiness, and grief are just as much symptoms as are nausea, headaches, and back pain, which, by the way, can be caused by loneliness. The remedy for too little of a human being caused a sensation or a loss of pressure would be a positive dose of the missed person. It is obvious that when the missing person returns, there is a great relief. The same phenomenon applies to the loss or absence of animals or beloved pets. In the case of the necessary plant foods that must be included in the diet for good health, their absence will create symptoms that can only be relieved by ingesting a larger quantity than usual of the missing foods. This is the principle followed in vitamin, mineral, enzyme, and glandular therapies. These alive and energetic substances put back the positive pressure in an area where vital life energy is missing. For a greater understanding of the overloads of pressures and allergy connections, which lessen our awareness and increase weakness, and for finding the hidden aspects and programming in our DNA that have eluded mainstream science, we will be going into this with the origins of genetic behavior, junk DNA, and unlocking the hidden secrets of your DNA in a next lecture. Symptoms and drug effects. Since the beginning of Hahnemann's research, many different materials and their effects on the human organism have been listed and recorded. Each material carries its own distinctive medicinal and curative properties that affect the vital forces of the body. Hahnemann's testing was carried out on healthy and unhealthy people to prove the efficacy of the doctrines of homeopathy. The record of these drug effects has come down through many different sources. A botanist and Swiss physician in the 1750s was the first, and Hahnemann greatly admired him, calling him the great and immortal Albrecht von Haller. Haller wrote in his Pharmacopoeia, "A remedy must first be tried on a healthy body without any foreign admixture. Once one has tested its odor and taste, one should take a small portion of the dose and pay attention to any effects which ensue. What are the pulse rate, the temperature, the respiration rate, the excretions? After observation of the succession of clear effects in a healthy body, one may proceed to trials on a sick one." End quote. Hahnemann experimented on himself and his family, and his findings led to the repertory that still holds today. Many of the listings of drug actions came about either by experimental provings or by the observations made on cases of those who had been poisoned, attacked, bitten, or injured in some way. There were also hospital records of patients who had been given certain materials to bring about cures of diseases. A tremendous warehouse of knowledge was obtained by the careful scrutiny of Hahnemann, Constantine Hering, and Dr. E. N. Hale. However, most of the more common sources of drug effects cataloging came from Hahnemann's Materia Medica Pura, This was a prelude to his greatest work written in 1828, Homeopathic Materia Medica, which covered most of what were then termed chronic diseases. Other contributors to the present storehouse of information on the effects of homeopathic materials are Doctors Jorg, Hartlaub, Trink, Staff, Roberts, and Boninghausen. The homeopathic provings. The proving of the homeopathic remedies on human beings was carried out very scientifically and has been catalogued in many texts. Provings in this modern age continue on healthy individuals who have no sign of current symptoms. The persons involved must clear themselves of alcoholic beverages and drugs of every kind before embarking on proving the validity of certain homeopathic effects. Other modifiers that are considered are age, sex, and temperament of the person. It may be necessary to start off with a small dilution and work up to larger doses. Dilutions are measured in accordance with the logarithmic progressions as stated before, either centesimally or decimal. To prove a homeopathic drug symptom, there are 3 essential conditions that are associated with the symptoms: the location of the symptom, the specific type of sensation or pain associated with the symptom, and the effect of the condition when the body is in motion, the modality. There may be symptoms that occur in clusters that are not in any great strength above one another. In other words, there can be colic, diarrhea, headache, and a pain in the kneecap, all of about the same strength. There are many symptoms that work as a group and must be noted as specific and unique to each homeopathic application. The sequence of the effects of the body is most important. There are usually 3 types of effects: the primary, secondary, and tertiary effects. This means that certain drugs or materials that are dosed against the body will respond in a sequence of symptoms. For instance, a certain material may produce nausea, then a trigger response or reaction of a pain in the low back, and a third trigger reaction may cause a pain in the lungs. In this case, symptoms shift according to just how long the drug has been dosed against the body. Symptoms as wavelength and frequency. When the body is attacked by an outside organism, or is overwhelmed by a wavelength and frequency beyond its control, there is the appearance of a certain particular set of conditions. These conditions turn into either general symptoms, very peculiar or characteristic symptoms, or the gravitation toward the upset of specific areas of the body. As I went over earlier, each homeopathic material has its own specific characteristic, and these characteristics are demonstrated by pressures and upsets reflected against the body itself. First, general symptoms. These general symptoms can be found across the board as conditions in human beings. These are the weaknesses, headaches, and other fill-in-the-blank, non-specific complaints that currently pervade society and are generally unspoken. The second is the characteristic symptoms. Genuine characteristic symptoms are colorful, descriptive symptoms turned on by a specific material. These are strange and recognizable reactions. It is the type of symptom that can easily be misunderstood if not carefully monitored by a trained homeopathic practitioner. The sensations of a hair on the tongue, or the pressure of something that feels like a nail in the eye, and other descriptive, peculiar information. Dr. Herring sometimes referred to these symptoms as the guiding symptoms. The third area of symptom. When applying homeopathic materials to the body, it is extremely important to note the area or location of the body where the symptom resides. It is of great significance to locate the pain or sensation because this is a peculiarity or characteristic in and of itself. As it is with all materials of great individuality, each will move toward its own special location in the body. Some homeopathic drug materials will have an affinity for the liver, others the spleen, and still others the thyroid. There are other substances that will generally produce effects on the eyes, ears, nose, throat, or head area. This action is a manifestation of the particular wavelength of the substance itself. It is the distortion of waves that reside in a certain area around the material that will cause it to gravitate to particular regions of the human body. It is the collision of the frequency and wavelength of these materials with the frequency and wavelength of the human body that cause it to aggravate certain glands or organs and leave other areas of the human organism alone. Now, finding one's own remedies can be a lengthy process. Homeopathic drug symptoms have been recorded and published for more than 200 years by many different authors and researchers. So it can be a daunting task to unravel, or even for a trained homeopathic practitioner to do. Finding the specific remedies one needs might have taken a long time in the past. However, great strides were made in symptomatology studies by Joseph R. Sconia Jr. and the Life Energy Research Group. Joe created an easier and faster way of assessing the needs of patients, clients, and interested parties alike. Okay, and that is going to conclude our lecture on the healing wave and the control of life energy. We hope you enjoyed this lecture, and we hope you'll join us for our next series of lectures coming soon. And here we are in the podcast again, talking on the other side of the lecture series. This is the second part of a two-part lecture series on homeopathy revisited, the 4 methods of healing, the healing wave, and the control of life energy. So I really do hope that you are getting something out of these podcasts, these shows, and these lectures. It's a lot of information that I'd like to put out. Really want to lean into the self-discovery and self-exploration, and give you and empower you to move forward in your own path of self-awareness, which is the main goal, to know thyself. Once you've begun the path of self-knowledge and learning about your own operations and how you go about your own life, a lot of other doors start to begin opening. And you do need to know about yourself in order to delve and deal with what's behind these other doors. Some of them can be quite challenging, and some of them can be very full of blessings and empowerment. It's very important to know your own operations, how you operate. And you learn a lot of this with SAF. You start to become attuned to seeing a number and knowing when that number shows up. For an example, SAF number 21, posterior pituitary, grief. When you start to see that, you know kind of where that is in your life, what that's responding to, what experiences that's drawing from. It gives you knowledge of yourself in relation to the number 21, posterior pituitary. So that, kind of gives you an idea. If it's not that, then let's say number 19, skin, boredom. So you see that number pop up, and okay, this is that chain reaction of energy that is manifesting boredom in my life. And you may know the source of that, depending on how deep you've worked with yourself, where that boredom comes from in the depths of your life, really, really far back. Because a lot of this will start very early in life, and it's for us to kind of traverse our own lives to know ourselves from today all the way back to your birth, and maybe even beyond that. And we'll get into that a little bit with the origins of genetic behavior, not just here, but in other lives as well, as that is a very deep subject that might be many lectures or many shows. But so that's that's the gist of that. So we'd like to increase our self-awareness, knowledge of self. One of the best ways to do that is to begin recapping your life, the memories, the powerful and emotional moments in your life, down to the little minutia, the little things that you may not even think had a big impact, but may have set in motion a chain reaction. And that chain reaction may have evolved through your life, through many different experiences and moments that, increased a level of, like we said, boredom or a grief. It could be the grief led into the boredom or vice versa. And these are the things that you'll learn when doing SAF, and of course, just when involving yourself, with learning about yourself. It's quite a fun experience to gain new knowledge of past memories and feel empowered from knowing about those memories and kind of taking the energy back to the present day. So, yeah. So this is the end of today's show. I will be looking to do another show hopefully next week. But if not, it will probably be sometime just after the new year, 2023. And it's looking to be a great year. So if I don't hear from you, happy holidays. And until next time, be well.